Cows. I love them, and many of the UK farming community are as passionate about bovines as I am. In this episode, I chat with Oxfordshire dairy farmer David Christensen, who milks 600 cows on a rotary parlour system. I share a tasty recipe for salted caramel chocolate brownies, and we also talk about ice cream. Tune in if you want more. Hello, welcome to the Countryside Kitchen Meets, a food and farming podcast. I'm Millie Fife, your host. I'm a mum of two, farmer's wife, food producer, and passionate about flying the flag for British food and farming. Today we'll be chatting to Oxfordshire dairy farmer David Christensen. Then I've got some inspiration when it comes to mealtime preparation and some recipes to share, meaning you can juggle family life with the children and cook a tasty, nutritious meal too. Okay, let me introduce you to my guest. David Christensen is a dairy farmer at Kingston Hill Farm near Kingston Badpews in Oxfordshire. He lives there with his wife Catherine and three children who run their farm diversification, a luxury ice cream business called the Oxford Cow. Meanwhile, David will be tending to his herd of Frisian, Scandinavian Reds and Brown Swiss dairy cows, milked using a rotary parlour, a bit like a giant merry-go-round for cows. I first visited the parlour when I was about 15 during a young farmer's visit when the parlour was first installed. It really did blow my mind, as I've never seen anything like it, and probably at the time for many farmers would be quite revolutionary. A proactive farmer who is involved in many aspects of his local community and a fellow of the Royal Agricultural Societies. The question on everyone's mind just now is, what is David's favourite flavour of ice cream? So without further ado, let's catch up with David and ask him. Hi, David. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good. Thank you, Millie. Very well indeed. Thank you.
And come on, what's your favourite ice cream flavour that your wife makes?
So it would have to be lemon meringue because I'm a huge lemon fan to start with. And the lemon meringue ice cream is divine. I think raspberry ripple would be second. And to be honest, they're all good, but those would be my top two. So lemon meringue would be my favourite. Yeah.
Amazing. And would you have it on its own or served with something?
Ideally on its own, just because it's so good. Although, as somebody said to me the other day, you must eat ice cream all the time in your house. And you'd be amazed at how infrequently we eat ice cream, actually. I don't know why. You'd think logically we'd have a freezer full. Where the ice cream is kept is in a different place to where we live, and thus we don't seem to get as much as we all thought we might do when we started this business. But that's probably good for my waistline.
Absolutely. That's the same with me and our pigs, because we have a lot of sausages. So we seem to eat a lot of sausage, actually. But that's not a bad thing either.
No.
So talk to me a bit about Kingston Hill Farm. It's been managed by your family for over 50 years. Who do you supply and where does the milk go?
Yes, indeed. Mum and Dad set the farm up in 1968 when they were awarded the tenancy. Our milk goes to Arla. And in our case, at this farm, our milk then goes to the dairy at Aylesbury, and we are allocated to Tesco. So we have some extra quality assurance requirements to do for Tesco, and our milk will go into a pool of milk that then ends up in those poly bottles that you see on supermarket shelves. So our milk will be part of that pool. And currently it's being collected every other day, goes off to Aylesbury, is processed, and then into those bottles.
Excellent. And how many cows are you milking at the moment?
So we're just about at the end of calving now, and so we're milking about 600 cows in the herd. So we're approaching full production. December is our peak month, and we'll be doing something like 20,000 litres of milk a day when we get to December. Wow. So that's a lot of milk. The cows take a lot of looking after, to look after them properly. But I'm blessed with a really good team of staff, and we've invested in the buildings and that over the years to facilitate looking after the cows well. So they're all comfortably in now. They're lying on sand beds. They've got free access to their food, and they're milked twice a day. So they're in good shape.
Yeah, and presumably during the warmer months when the grass is growing, they're outside for some of the time, and then you bring them in for milking. Or what system are you on at the moment?
Yes, we're great exponents of grazing. So if the climate allows, then the true winter, when the cows are housed for 24 hours a day, is only for 3 months, which is November, December and January. We can normally be doing some element of grazing in both October and February. They may be only out for a few hours each day, but it gets them out of the barns. And then as the season goes on and the grass starts to grow, then we can get them out 24 hours a day. So from early April, they are out 24 hours a day until probably mid-September, when they start coming back in at night, and then into October and into November when they're fully housed.
It's a hell of a sight, isn't it, when you let them out and they skip and they jump and they go absolutely bonkers, don't they? It's just like looking at a rodeo sometimes.
In a farming sense, and particularly in a dairy farming sense, it is our highlight day of the year, because they do go bonkers, absolutely bonkers. They find a hole and apply the soil that their war paint, so they're all shaking their heads and they're kicking their legs, and others are going from side to side. It is the most fantastic sight, and it also signals for us the reduction of the winter workload, so that's great for our team. So for a combination of both the cows and the team, it's a wonderful day. And as I said, they may only be out for a few hours to start with until the grass really gets going, but it's great to have them back out the barns again.
Definitely. And explain to the listeners about this, about your rotary parlour then, because obviously for most people, they won't have seen a rotary parlour. So it's pretty cool, isn't it? Because it is basically like a merry-go-round for cows.
It is, and it's known as sometimes it's known as a carousel, which of course is another name for a merry-go-round. Yes, I mean the biggest challenge that we face as large-scale dairy farmers is labour, and that's been exacerbated since the Brexit vote. But it was never been easy, and so one of the keys for us is when you find a good person, you hang on to them, and part of that is you ensure that they don't work for too long hours, and so our rotary parlour is our answer to that. It allows us to milk a large number of cows quickly, but do it well at the same time, so that our staff don't have to work silly hours. Now, it's still a long working day relative to a lot, but it's not as long as it could be. And that's really important. And that's important for both the staff and the cows, because it also means the cows are not standing around for too long. So it's a great big roundabout. The cows step on one at a time. Their teats are cleaned the moment they've stepped on. And then we have a bit of a gap before we attach the milking units, and that's important to allow the milk to be let down from the cow. And then the cow goes off on her rotation, so you can imagine this great big carousel rotating, and the cow's stood there being milked. She gets fed while she's on the milking platform as well. And then when she gets to the other side, the milking unit is taken off automatically. We have a third member of the team just checking that she's been milked out properly, and if she needs additional teat spraying to look after her teats, we do that. And then she gets back to the bridge and she reverses out, goes through 180 degrees and walks back to the field in the summer or the barn in the winter. And that process takes about between 10 and 12 minutes, depending on how much milk is on the cows, what time of year it is, etc. etc.
So they go round once.
They go around once. If we've got what we call a slow milker, or a cow with an extra lot of milk on, we can put a little chain behind her so she can't reverse out, and she does a second rotation, and that gives her time to milk out properly. So again, we can look after those cows. But it is a great way to milk a lot of cows, and it is, to your point, it is slightly hypnotic when you're looking at it. It's a great sight, and you just look at all these cows stepping on, reversing off quietly and calmly. It's a great way to milk a lot of cows.
Yeah, definitely. Am I making it up that you've got a viewing platform, or do some people now have like viewing platforms where you can see the rotary?
Yeah, you are making it up that we have got one, because we haven't. No. But you're right that some farms do. And I think if I were doing it again, I would consider putting a proper viewing gallery in. I was very cost driven when we did this, but I think in hindsight I should have done. I was fortunate to visit a robotic dairy over the weekend, the opening of a new state-of-the-art robotic dairy, and they had incorporated a really good viewing point above the whole barn. And I thought that's really super when you've got visits, that people can go up there and have a look and take it in from that height and that perspective, looking down on the cows and the process. So it would be one for the future if we did it again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, you obviously do quite a lot within your local community. Do you do the likes of Open Farm Sunday, or other events on the farm?
So we have done Open Farm Sunday Sunday in the past. We haven't done it of late, but we
Mm.
do tend to have a few visitors locally will come to the farm, both locally and wider groups. And in fact, the other night we had two of the local junior young farmers clubs come around. So Bicester and Islip and
Yep.
Farringdon came around, which was fantastic. There
Yep.
were over 50 of them, which I
Amazing.
thought was super.
Yeah.
And we had a look around the farm, look at the calves, look at the parlour, cow accommodation, stuff like that. And then we finished off with an ice cream. So clearly we're trying to work out what they really came for. Was it the look around the farm, or was it the ice cream at the end? But it was really lovely to have them. Such an enthusiastic crowd, and so many of them. And I was really struck by the number, which I think bodes well for the future.
Definitely. Well, I think, it is inspiring that you've got so many young farmers coming to see you, and whether or not it's sort of understanding more about dairy farming or farm diversification or just the eating of ice cream and potentially new customers, who knows? But I think it's wonderful that obviously you're able to open your doors and show people around, because it is a big time commitment. And I mean, I know on our farm as well, we have the local schools come down and other groups and things, but it's important, isn't it, to be able to showcase what we're doing?
It's critically important. And if I have a concern over dairying, it is that we don't tell our story nearly enough. I think we have a really good story in the UK. We're not perfect. No business ever is. And like all businesses, all farmers, we seek to improve year on year. But actually, when you look at us in relative terms, we start from a pretty high bar,
Yeah.
and we should be selling that message. And we don't talk enough about just how good we are. So these events where you get people onto the farm are important as part of the whole package about how we communicate better with our customer, with non-government organisations, with government, with local government, etc., to get our message across. It's really important.
Definitely. And I think milk is one of those commodities that's generally taken for granted, because you pour it on your cereals or in your cup of tea in the morning or what have you. And it's kind of, unless you really think about it, you probably don't appreciate the journey in which it has gone from getting it from the supermarket, well, from the farm, from the cow to the farm, to the supermarket, to your door.
And we had a vet student here recently from New York, super bright girl. And she said to me after a week, she said, I had no idea how much went into milk production. And that's exactly to your point. And I recently did a piece for Radio Oxford, and the presenter there said the same thing after visiting the farm. She said, wow. She said, I had no idea. There was so much work involved, so much thought goes into it. So again, I do think we need to get better at telling our story, because it's a good story. And actually, I think it's interesting too. I think, when people understand it better, that they're more interested in it and engage with it. And that's really important.
Definitely. And I think even like looking after our soil and grass management, and then, the seasonality with dairying. I mean, you said before that the cows are coming in at certain times of the year. Obviously, you're having to supplementary feed them when they're inside, and when they're outside and when the grass is growing, they're obviously generally producing a bit more milk. But obviously, there's all of that that has to go into it, and also caring for the animals as well. And a cow's got 4 stomachs and the ruminate, all of that sort of stuff to me is really interesting. And I don't know if you get quite a lot of questions on that, or that sort of part of the story, really.
I think the key is to try and unlock some of the interesting points. We've fitted what we call cow manager ear tags to all our cows a few years ago. And basically, they're Fitbits for cows. And so the moment you start to describe it in those terms, you engage people. They suddenly can identify with it and go, oh, okay, tell me why you're doing that, what information you can get. And when you go through the benefits of installing something like that, in terms of being able to monitor the cow's health and detect early that she might be going off colour, when it tell them about it helps you with fertility management in the cows, and it helps efficiency, and in particular, it helps lower our environmental footprint, that they really come to life with all that. I think grass is another example. Everyone just thinks that grass is green and grows in a field. Actually, when you talk to them about walking around a field with a plate meter, which is a device for measuring grass, and you talk about what goes into grass and the soil beneath it, and measuring the soil, and now we're measuring soil carbon and stuff like that, suddenly people are going, wow, there's so much more to this than meets the eye. And that robot unit I was at the weekend. When you go and see a state-of-the-art unit like that, you go, blimey, there's something involved in all of this. So yeah, I think it's really important we tell our story. I think we've got to get much, much better at it, as I say. But I think we've got a great story to tell, and we shouldn't be afraid to do so.
No, absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. And so have you always wanted to be a dairy farmer? Is it a bit of a rite of passage because obviously mum and dad established the business? Was it your natural progression, or did you want to do something else and get into dairying?
No, to start with, I was going to be a fighter pilot, and then I was going to be, I think, a research scientist into studying nuclear stuff and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then I think around 15, 16, it's a bit like a drug. It gets into you, farming. And I started reading all the magazines that came through the post that Dad never had time to open or read. And I would take them and read them. And I just really got passionate about what an exciting industry it is, how rewarding it is, the tangible satisfaction of what we do. And I think that the wider good of what we do in terms of clearly producing food, but also the greater contribution that farms can make to the local community, and that really excited me. So I went to work on a farm in Hereford for a year, which was pivotal, and then I went to university for 3 years. Went to Newcastle University, where I came out with both the degree and my future wife, which was surreal. What
a bonus!
What a successful 3 years. And the degree was important, but nowhere near as important as my dear and wonderful wife. And then I went and milked cows in New Zealand for 9 months, and then I came back and got involved, and gradually that sort of switch over of roles from my father to me in terms of taking on more and more management of the business, to today where my father is still a silent partner in the business, but Catherine and I run it, and we have this farm. We have another dairy unit, and we have another load of cattle on top of that. So it's all about cattle. We haven't really diversified. We've got the very small ice cream business, which we'll talk about at the moment, but the core business is milking cows and raising of cattle, and we really enjoy what we do there.
Yeah. And you touched on the fact that you involve the local community, and you were talking to me before we went on air about a local 10K race that you're involved with. Can we just talk about that for a little while?
Yes, certainly. Our local village, Longworth, there's a group of us that go and run every Saturday morning just to try and keep some vestige of fitness in place. And each year we hold an organised 10K race that other runners can attend. Yeah. And it's done for charity, so any spare proceeds after the costs get given to a local educational charity. And so I help get set up, putting all the signs up and stuff like that. But our key involvement there is that we are one of the key sponsors for that event now. And so our sponsorship takes the form of giving an ice cream to all the runners when they have completed the 10K, and to all the stewards and the helpers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's lovely. I mean, it is absolutely fantastic to be able to help in that way. So many of the runners come up to me at the start and say, the only thing that will get us round this 10K is the thought of one of your wife's ice creams at the end. So what a nice thing to be able to be involved with.
Yeah.
And we then attend all the local fetes and events. This year we've been doing coronation events. Last year we were doing jubilee events and stuff like that. And we always give a proportion of the takings to the charity or whoever's running the event when it's a charitable event like that. So that's really important. And I think it's a great way to involve the farm in the local community.
Yes.
We do other stuff as well. We are blessed to have the Thames as our northern boundary. Yeah. So we have one field where scouts can come and camp in the summer. Scouts and guides can come and camp. We don't charge.
Oh, brilliant.
If your group can afford it, then you can make a donation to a charity, but don't feel under any pressure. It's more important that you come and use the field. Don't worry about money. And they've got Thames frontage. So we get Sea Scouts coming and they can canoe and all the rest of it. So that's fabulous for them as well. So and those are sort of the ways that we can be involved in the local community, and I think that's really important again.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it is a lovely setting where you are, because obviously I know from growing up around there, and also once upon a time I used to work at the Rose Revived. So
oh, well, our daughter now is working there. Nancy, our daughter, is now as of this summer, she's been working in the Rose Revived, and she's doing weekends on Sunday afternoons there now. So still going strong. All right, still going
Yeah,
strong.
I mean, yeah, it's a beautiful pub with a lovely garden right aside the River Thames, and
Yes,
it is a bit of a mecca, isn't it? When the sun shines, you can go and have
indeed,
something to eat and a
indeed,
drink.
indeed.
It's beautiful. So yeah, little plug there for a local business, that's for sure. You must be a morning person if you're a dairy farmer. That's what I always, because I'm a night owl, and so I always have a respect for dairy farmers, because you're up at the crack of dawn and milking generally twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day, depending on what system you're on. But what's the favourite bit about your job?
Yes, I don't mind the mornings. We milk twice a day, so we start at just before 5 most of the year round. Um, it's interesting you say you're a night owl, because Catherine is a night owl. So clearly we
Mm.
work at different ends of the
Mhm.
day. But I do like the mornings, particularly like the mornings in the summer when it is beautiful. It's a bit harder in the winter. I always
Yeah.
think the hardest mornings are those in January, just after Christmas, particularly
Mm.
Sunday morning when you're getting up and there's, the rain's battering in the window and you think, what on earth am I doing this job for? But our team are fantastic and just turn in and get on with the job and get it done. So we're really blessed with them.
Yeah.
I think the mornings, the job more widely, the sense of tangible satisfaction. I
Yeah.
like the buzz of dairy farming. I like the fact there's a vacuum pump going twice a day. I like the fact there's people about, there's
Mm.
things happening. It's a very lively atmosphere and I
Mm.
enjoy that. And it's constantly challenging too. So I think whatever I did, if it weren't farming, I would need to be doing something where there was lots of activity. I mean, one of
Mm.
my other earlier career thoughts was to go and manage Heathrow or be involved in something like that, or manage a major railway station, something where there's a constant buzz, constant activity,
Yeah.
because I think that's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess instead of managing aeroplanes and what have you, you're managing staff, cattle, and probably the milk tanker that's coming maybe every day or every couple of days, and all of the other deliveries that happen on a farm.
Yes, I mean, again, we're fortunate that I push as much of that onto my team as I can,
Yeah.
because the day-to-day stuff they can sort out, and they're
Yeah.
super intelligent people. They don't need to be micromanaged. In fact, I
No.
could think of nothing worse.
Yeah.
So that then takes a lot of that stuff off me as well, and
Mm.
I only get called in when there's a bit of firefighting needed or something like that. But the
Yeah.
day-to-day stuff they do most of, and it allows me to look at the bigger picture. I think the management phrase is to work on the business rather than work in the business.
Mm.
Now, I actually like to work in the business as well, because that's one of the reasons you go into it. So it's
Mm.
about getting that balance between the office and being out on the farm, getting that balance right. But I'm fortunate that I'm in a position that I can do both.
Yeah, yeah. And are there any myths that you want to dispel? Is there anything that really surprises you, in terms of dairying that our listeners would be interested to find out more about?
I'm amazed. Well, not amazed. I think the number of people that don't really understand how often cows are milked and how it works, and the fact that it
Mm.
happens twice a day in our system and
Mm.
365 days a year. I
Mm.
think that's an important point to get across, because again, it talks to the level of work that goes into milking cows and to doing
Mm.
it properly. I think on a wider level, there's a lot of concern about the carbon footprint of cows and methane and stuff like that.
Mm.
And it's very easy for the media to throw out simple messages. We live in a world of Twitter, or X as it's called now,
Mm.
140 odd characters, etc., etc.
Mm.
Actually, a lot of the time you can't get the message across in 140 characters. You
No.
can't dumb it down to that level. And the environmental footprint of dairy would be a good example. There's so much more to it than meets the eye.
Mm.
There's still a lot we don't really understand, and we're constantly working to improve. So I don't want customers or consumers worrying about the environmental footprint, because I think there are many bigger areas that as a
Mm.
society we need to focus on.
Mm.
That's not that we should be complacent. We should constantly focus on trying to get better, and we do. It's a
Mm.
big focus for us, just nibbling away at all those areas of efficiency. And for
Yeah.
instance, this year we've replaced all our light bulbs around the place with LED light bulbs. So
Mm.
that's just a small example of where light bulbs needed replacing. So let's switch to lower energy usage.
Mm.
We're concentrating on improving our grassland so we get more output from it. And we're constantly looking, how can we get more efficient? And when you become more efficient, then you lower your carbon footprint.
Yeah.
So I think to the consumer, the message I have is, don't overtly worry about the carbon footprint, the environmental footprint of
Mm.
dairying. We're good to start with. we can and will get better. And there's a big focus area for the industry in doing that.
Definitely. And presumably you get some support from your from Arla, and because I know that they have several programs and different things. They're keen to support all of their farmer suppliers.
I think it's really important, and it's really important that we have the information to be able to demonstrate what we're saying. So we have schemes in place now where we take certain information from the farm, and that can tell us how efficient or not, or are strong and weak areas, and how we can improve. And then we then turn that into another model, which we can then use to improve as well. So Arla are very much helping us do this. Not always popular with dairy farmers because it means more time in the office, and I completely get that. But I think it's really important that we have the information, and then we have the signposts as to where we have to improve. And that's where Arla are helping us with.
Definitely. And so where do you see the future of British dairying?
It ought to be really, really good. We are blessed with one of the best climates for food production generally in the world, and one of the best for dairying. Northwest Europe is really fortunate like that. So given that, we ought to be maximising sensible food production from the UK for those stuffs we can produce. Now, that doesn't mean we don't need to pay attention to the environment. We do, we absolutely do, and same for biodiversity. But equally, given the challenges around the world in terms of climate, and we only have to look at Europe this summer to see what's going on, and also the bigger geopolitical stuff, the Ukraine invasion last year, I think it's really important that we go on producing a decent amount of food ourselves in the UK. And dairy should be part of that, because when you look at the nutritious value that dairy can provide, it's a fundamental part of our diet. And it also tastes delicious. And that's really important too, that we enjoy our food. So it's up to us as farmers then to go on making sure we improve our operations and provide that information so the consumer can feel at ease doing that. So I think, summarising, I think dairy should have a really good future in the UK. Some of it's up to us, some of it's up to the government to help us as well. And to our consumers to get behind us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's, part of the reason why I do this podcast is because I'm really passionate about flying the flag for British food and farming, and getting behind all the campaigns and just highlighting all of the different things that farmers are responsible for in terms of food production, but of the wider element and impact. But then, talking about food security as well, that actually we should be proud and support and get behind all of our farmers for so many reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too heavy and too serious about it, but it is a really important point. The whole food security bit, given what's happening around the world, that is fundamental, and we just need to keep abreast of that. Particularly given we have such a great climate, as I say, and actually some really good farmers. And I'm sorry to repeat myself again, but we can and will improve, and we want to improve. So we will go on getting better at what we do.
Yeah, definitely. But there's also that sort of element of low food miles as well, because actually, we could ship goods from all around the world, which happens all the time, or you can buy from people on a local level, or looking for the red tractor logo, or looking for, I don't want to get into too much in the way of labeling and things, because there is a little bit of misinformation there as well. But I mean, knowing what is produced in this country and what's in season, I think sometimes we've forgotten a little bit about that. And so actually kind of making an informed choice is probably what we're both talking about.
And it's a really difficult area, isn't it? Because when we go shopping, we haven't got a lot of time.
No.
And I occasionally go and do the shopping, and I'm looking at, I sort of look at the labels, and actually I don't find the labels very easy sometimes. I find them quite confusing. So we've got to be really careful about how much more information we put on labels, because we don't want to overload us as shoppers. And so we've got to be smart about how we do that.
Yeah.
But I think generally for food produced in Northwest Europe and in the UK in particular, customers can be reassured that we start from a pretty good place in terms of quality, in terms of standards, and in terms of environmental footprint, and that ought to reassure them.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, moving into the kitchen, do you enjoy cooking, David? Are there any go-to recipes that you like preparing? Because I know when I kind of roped you into this podcast, you were like, oh, yeah, I've seen all the things you've been posting on social media. You might have even got me to start baking some of these.
Okay, so here comes the absolute weak point and confession. Absolute abject failure in the kitchen, or not failure, but I lived on my own for a year and survived. So clearly, I can cook. What's happened now is that I have a wife who is utterly super competent at cooking, and so whenever I come in the kitchen, she's a very patient woman ordinarily, but she kind of looks at the flailing havoc that is caused when I'm let loose. And she goes, "Oh, just get out of the way. I'm going to do it instead." So she tends to cook. So we have this arrangement that Catherine cooks and I wash up and clear up afterwards.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably a pretty practical arrangement. I mean, even to the extent when on the rare occasions that I barbecue, I'm suddenly sort of panicking out there, and she sort of looks at me and goes, "There's just absolutely no hope for you whatsoever." So I'm afraid I'm ashamed and slightly appalled to say that I almost never cook. On the occasions I do, a pasta is normally the dish because it's so easy.
Yeah.
And the kids sort of go, "Oh no, Dad's cooking. That means it's pasta again." So thankfully, our eldest son and our daughter are both very good cooks. Our middle son's probably a bit more like me, so they tend to cook now if Catherine's away and we are fending for ourselves.
Yeah.
And again, I wash up because that's part of the deal. So
excellent. Or you could just pedal down the hill and go to the Row Survived.
Well, we could, yes, we could do that, but clearly that costs a bit too much money.
Well, no, there is that.
It's probably not always the well, if you had it 5 nights a week, it wouldn't be the healthiest of options, I suppose. So we're better off cooking at home, and I really ought to get better. But I suspect as long as Catherine's in full domain, that won't be happening. She'll just get on and do it. Then.
Well, maybe there'll be a recipe I share that sort of inspires you to take up the mantle and
yeah, I really should. Yeah, you're right, Millie.
Now I asked a question and you've already said, I asked you beforehand, how can people find out more about you? And you said, well, I don't really do social media, but actually the Oxford Cow ice cream.
Yes, there is an Instagram account for the Oxford Cow Dairy. So if you look up Oxford Cow, you'll find that. And we again, our daughter runs it for us because neither of us want to get too involved in social media. So you can find out a bit there. That's about it. I mean, I think if you put Kingston Hill Farm or David Christensen into Google, there'll be some stuff. There's various media stuff that we've done in the past. So again, people want to find out a bit more, they can do there. But I think actually the Oxford Cow site will give you, or the Oxford Cow Instagram site will give you a bit more clue about the farm. And if people want to know more, they can just get in touch. Very happy to talk to people. Always happy to talk to people. Happy to take visits if groups want to come and have a look and talk about what we're doing. So again, they can find my details through the internet or via the Oxford Cow, and we can engage thereafter.
Amazing. Well, I'll put some details in the show notes anyway, so if anyone wants to find out any more information, then it will link straight to find out more about you. Okay, here are a few ideas for you to try at home. Salted caramel chocolate brownies, food heaven. Now, I'm gluten intolerant, and so I use gluten-free flour in this recipe, and I will put the full recipe. I've done a little video actually to sort of showcase how you can make this, but it is one of my go-tos. It's one of my showstoppers, as I always say. And you also use a whole pack of salted butter. I use Yo Valley, 2 bars of dark chocolate, some dark brown sugar, and I always use British sugar. Some cocoa powder, 4 eggs from my own chickens, some sea salt. I always use Cornish sea salt. It's really nice. And a whole tin of carnation caramel. So lots of dairy goodness in there. So basically how to make it, you basically melt the chocolate and the butter, combine with all the dry ingredients and some eggs, place half the mixture into a lined square tin and then spread the caramel on the top, and then place the rest of the mixture on the top of that, sprinkle with some sea salt, bake for 30 minutes and allow to cool, and either serve with some Rodder clotted cream or some of David's ice cream. It is amazing, honestly. It is a bit, if you've got a sweet tooth, it is definitely the recipe for you. And in season right now, November time, I'm talking red cabbage and beetroot, but root vegetables in general. I've really got into pickling at the moment recently, and my boys really love pickled beetroot and pickled cabbage. It's full of vitamin C, fibre, potassium, and the vinegar has benefits of probiotic as well, which is great for gut health. Generally, I slice, boil until soft, allow to cool and store in cider vinegar, as I can't use malt vinegar because of my gluten intolerance. And we always enjoy with a cheese ploughman, or if we're having friends over, we do it as part of a buffet. So David, what do those do they sound tasty recipes to you? Would you try and have a go at one of those?
Well, certainly the brownies to start with, they sound utterly divine. So I would do that. I'm probably a little less keen on the pickling, although I do my own slightly skewed version of it. We've got some damson trees on the farm, so I pickle them of a sense with brandy and sugar and
Yes.
damson brandy and
Yes.
and slow brandy as well. So that's my sort of my version of what you're doing.
Yeah.
But those brownies do sound divine. So
Yeah.
if I'm feeling particularly adventurous, and if Catherine's not around to see me the carnage in the kitchen, then I might have a go.
Absolutely, definitely. And yeah, damson gin, sloe gin. Oh, I do cherry brandy, raspberry gin. Oh, yeah, brilliant. No, especially for this time of year, it's a real sort of winter warmer, isn't it? You come in and it's
It's
cold.
lovely, and actually, as gifts, it's lovely to give to people as gifts. Just you don't need to give a big bottle, but it's the thought that's gone into it as well. The fact you've made it from the farm. So
Yeah.
we do a bit of that for Christmas time, which is lovely.
Yeah.
And of course to drink it as well, because you're quite right.
Yeah.
It's sustaining to get you through the winter months.
That's it. Or even like mixed with some prosecco or champagne is quite nice. Or
Very exotic. Very exotic. Well done.
But quite boozy. You don't need too much of it.
No.
Okay, I have had a voice note from Gemma Cooper, who is Head of Policy for the National Farmers Union of Scotland, who is also a really keen cook and forager. Let's hear from Gemma now.
Hi Millie, it's Gemma Cooper here. I was listening to your show and I was inspired to send you a really nice autumnal recipe, which is made from foraged brambles and hopefully some garden apples if you're lucky enough to have some trees. So this is apple crumble. For the filling, you're going to need 575 grams of apples. You're also going to need about 100 grams of hedgerow brambles and a couple of tablespoons of golden castor sugar. So you're going to chop up your apples into 1 centimetre chunks and just warm them in a pan just to gently soften them down a little bit before you put them to the side. You're then going to need to make your crumble mix, and for that you're going to need 175 grams of plain flour, 110 grams of golden castor sugar, and the same of cold butter. Just make sure that your butter is really cold if you've got a really warm kitchen, because if it's not, your crumble will just go into lumps and it just won't work. So you're then going to top your apples with your lovely crumble mixture, and then on the top of that you're going to pop rolled oats. Obviously we're in Scotland, so we love our oats, and some demerara sugar. You're going to put that in your oven for around about 35 minutes. So the oven's going to be 190 degrees C, which is 170 fan or gas mark 5. And then you're going to set it to the side for 10 minutes to cool and serve it with really whatever you fancy, double cream, clotted cream or custard. And enjoy.
Oh, that really tastes delicious. And during this cold snap, I am definitely going to have a crack at that one. That's all we've got time for today. Don't forget to tune into the next episode of the Countryside Kitchen Meets, which comes out on the 1st of each month, and you can subscribe on all major platforms. Get in touch with me if you'd like to be on a future episode, or send me a voice note with your recipe ideas and suggestions, or if you've recreated anything that I've shared. Drop me a line. My email is hello@millie5.com. And of course, No Fuss Meals for Busy Parents is on Instagram, Facebook, and actually it's now a community interest company. I probably haven't said that enough at the moment. It's now I've now actually registered it as a social enterprise to do more of this, which I'm hoping will grow and more people will find out about what is growing in this country, and teaming that with recipe ideas and suggestions. Thank you so much, David, for joining me. I've really enjoyed finding out more about all the things you do at home, on the farm, and the things in the wider community. And I hope that I might have inspired you to get cooking at some point.
I think I've got no choice now, have I, really, Millie? I've got to pull my finger out and get busy. But I've really enjoyed being part of it. So thank you for the invitation today.
Oh, brilliant. All right. Well, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye.